this was a brilliant example and question that came up with a group of software developers, JavaScript developers that I'm working with. We are working on researching ways in how you can make sure everybody is on the same page. And within this, what I'm going to show you here is exactly points, inconsistencies that add confusion. These are all UX things. They lengthen time, they increase the time, they increase cognitive load by making things more complicated because of the lack of consistency. So, like any research, I created this card this morning, or yesterday actually, because the deadline was today. And they basically had put together and shared, do a card, add the checklist to the card, and follow the checklist and give your feedback. That would then, that was the shall we say, the information to get started and follow the checklist that was here. Checklists can be used many different ways, because that was one of the questions. Do I always add a checklist? What am I supposed to do? For most cases, how do we know something is done? And my way of researching may be different from your way of researching. It may be different from, lots of different things. I put together this checklist based on, because I do a lot of UX, user experience research. What are the main things I need to know? And I had mapped out these questions, and at the very bottom here, I did leave space for anything else, last thoughts, anything else that in particular you might like to add. So that was the task. And I had done 2 examples here. So if you look at, so we're looking at these 3 bottom cards. Okay, let me just put the spotlight on these. So we're looking at this card, and this card. These 2 I have here as an example. One where I've started, one where it's finished, because you can see 9 out of 9 are finished. This card, I've only 3 out of 9 finished, so I didn't get it finished yesterday. The original card is 0 out of 9. That means it instantly should say this hasn't been started. Nothing on the checklist has been completed. Let's come down to one of the ones, and it was really kind of him to let me share this with you, because these mistakes are so common, and I don't even want to call them mistakes. It's just about lack of understanding of what a Trello board is. A Trello board, when you're using it in a project, now I only have one column here just, to kind of cut out the other noise. It's to make it really easy to understand at a glance where things are in a project at any given time. And the idea of checklists, how do I know something is done? So I might, ask, and this happens a lot with business people. So this is, if you're watching this and you're a business person, please stay watching it, because business people's idea of things can often be very vague, very abstract. You need to be able to say, right, I want this, 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 and this. Or, which is what I would often ask, what's your business goal? And then I will say, right, we're going to do this, 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 and this. So when we look at these, it doesn't look like this card is finished. However, let me open it and come out of the focusing. Oops. It is, he has actually completed it. He has done out the description here, but nothing is checked off. So for me at a glance, it looks like that card's not done. So that's the first inconsistency, or the first thing, is that it's 0 out of 11. He hasn't done the checklist. Also, why is it 11? These are all 9. Again, and it doesn't look, and I'll show you in a second, I'll compare it with mine. It doesn't look any different between the 2 of them. So that's another thing to watch, is that if you're given a checklist, unless you are specifically told, which it's not in the card, to change it, you do not change it. Okay? You just reuse a checklist so that then becomes the consistency, because if you're doing research, you have to compare apples with apples, oranges with oranges, pears with pears. You can't mix them up, or it's impossible to do a comparison. So that's why I suggested that they will copy the checklist down between them, so that we're comparing like with like. And then there is space, of course, at the bottom of there's 8 points, and then the 9th one is, anything else you can add to it. Because there will be variations, obviously, in everything that we're looking at. So I always leave that open-ended question at the end. Would you like to add more? So that's the first thing. The next thing is as well, I had suggested they would add themselves as a member in the checklist. You can see I'm on these 2 cards, but I don't know who made this card. Well, I do, but it's visually, it's impossible for me to know. Here's another thing that makes this card very difficult to understand versus these 2. I have put in the platforms, so Tutorial Spot and was it Cand.io. So these are the platforms that were used. So again, if I start moving these cards around, it's still really clear what card that is. Again, if everybody had just written CSS test, you're not going to have a clue. So keeping almost like a unique identifier in the title that makes it really clear what the task is about. You have to keep it very short and concise, but that it makes it easy to find again. Also, I requested putting these labels on because, again, if we're doing, at the moment, we're just doing HTML and CSS. Next task, we'll probably do JavaScript, then we'll do React. It makes it, again, really, really easy. Why won't this decide to go over here to me? That when it's finished, I can put it in, these ones in this list. Where do I put this one? Don't know. Does that make sense? That's what that is the key, and why Trello is so good when it's used well. So these are best practices for Trello. So let's shorten this up. You might get a double of me. I'm not sure, but so I'm going to open my card here. Let's see double of me for a second, but then it'll disappear because I come back to this one and this one. Come on, you can do it. So, sorry, cancel that. These points were here, and they're fairly similar to mine. So I'm not even quite sure what the 2 extras are. Again, this is where it becomes, just let me squish that over out of the way so you're not seeing 2 of me. This is then where it becomes cognitive fatigue. So if I'm trying to manage this and quickly go in, I'm like, okay, so we've 8 over here. Okay, maybe I should have put 9 there because it was the last point. But now we have 11 over here. Again, we've apples and oranges situation again. Cognitive fatigue. Cognitive means you're creating unnecessary thinking is the best way of doing it. And so our energy is also, it's quite, we have to mind that. But and time, it's again losing time because I'm trying to go, okay, so what are the differences here? Here's another one. It was asked out of 10. Suddenly, just because the result of the test became out of 30, it got changed to 30. So again, apples, oranges, apples, oranges. If it says 10, you leave it at 10. Unless some the card specifically says you can change things. If you keep changing things to suit yourself, this is how we start to get, you can start to see how inconsistencies grow and grow and grow and grow. Does that make sense? So even though it was out of 30, he should have divided that and brought it back to 10. Because the requirement was, and again, this is going back to, what are the requirements? Am I answering the requirements, or am I deciding to put it on myself? Now, these are, like, the way this was done, I see this happen so often. That's why I asked, can I please show this as an example? Because it's a brilliant example where, from the UX perspective, inconsistencies cause confusion. Lack of labeling. So the fact that I'm here as a member and I've labeled it that it's HTML, CSS. I know we have CSS up there, but somebody else on the main board has CSS test as well. I don't know whose is whose. Trust me, when they come back next week, they're going to have to click into the card. Oh yeah, that's my one. That's time. That's wasting time. It should be we should make it really clear on the surface, so that we can pick and grab really quickly. And again, then for comparing like with like, keep things consistent throughout. So I hope you find that valuable, regardless of whether you're a software developer or even if you're in business. This stuff really, really matters. Consistency is trustworthiness, and also it stops, the consistency stops wasting time or creating a cognitive fatigue of what, trying to, what's this, constantly trying to match things. So even when it comes to our designs or when it comes to stuff within our business, we need to keep that, whatever we decide to use, it needs to stay consistent across the board. And that's what we're actually working on in this group. So the guys really understand the importance of it. So I hope you do too. So let me know. I hope it was helpful and somewhat useful for you. I'd love to hear some feedback.